The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. What a video game. My first Zelda game, one that still ranks in my top 3 Zeldas after all these years. A game about a strikingly dismal world destined for destruction, a world with a surplus of gray and complicated situations. There is incredibly mature subject matter for a children's game stuffed in here. Depressed folks, a town completely divided between wanting to flee and enjoying the yearly festival, a mother who gets separated from her children and loses her will to live, and the list extends far beyond this sentence. Ocarina of Time was no stranger to adult themes and undertones, but the beginning of your journey in that game is a hopeful one. You're a kid seeing the world for the first time. You're gonna scheme with the princess and stop Ganon. You're gonna make the Great Deku Tree proud. Everything is gonna be alright. Oh, right. Majora's Mask doesn't even grant you that initial grace. The Deku Nut hits the ground right when you hit start, and it's just the beginning of your journey in Termina. This game critically wasn't as beloved as Ocarina of Time, but nowadays with more guides and experiences with the game out there, I would wager to guess that so many more have come to adore Majora. However, there is one segment of this game that is not so beloved, and rightfully so: Stone Tower. The temple itself, I think many people love. It's complex. Midway through the dungeon, it requires you look at every room in more than one way. The conclusion kicks ass. It's a great note to end the game's main dungeons on. However, the tower itself, climbing it, it's fair to say that it's not a fun time. Many consider it a low point of the game, but if you've read the title, you can wager a guess that I feel quite differently, as a matter of fact. Now, I'm not about to unironically argue that this section is ridiculously fun or the pinnacle of Majora's Mask's gameplay, because it is neither of those things. I do think it is an oddly resonant part of the game's story, though. In the sense of pure plot, the tower itself doesn't really progress anything, but thematically it serves as a final obstacle before you kick into the home stretch, and it's always been incredibly meaningful for me. So let's talk about it. One of my standout memories from using the internet and discovering YouTube content surrounding video games that I liked as a teenager was finding game theory for, better and worse.
Game theory!
Notably, this theory about Link's death at the beginning of the game. In a portion of it, MatPat talks about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief, or 5 of the potential stages one could go through when grieving. I do want to preface the rest of this video by saying that this model isn't meant to serve as the formula one can follow to process grief or death, as Elizabeth Kubler-Ross herself clarifies that some may not experience all of the stages or won't experience them in a specific linear order. It's more so the stages she often saw experienced by those dying or grieving. Grief and death are experienced differently by different people, and I'm no expert by any means. In fact, the expert herself received notable amounts of criticism surrounding the layout and empirical evidence used to create this model in the first place. I simply believe it works as an interesting lens to view Majora's Mask through. Don't take any of what I say as an assertion of this being definitively what grief is. That's one thing about grief that makes it so scary. It's this nebulous thing that takes many different forms for different people. I just wanted to clarify all of that before we move on. This video was the first I had heard of this model, and Sir Matthew Patrick would go on to demonstrate the way the game's areas and their problems aligned with that model. It was the first time I remember my mind being blown by what hid behind a story's subtext, and to this day I think that reading functions exceptionally. I personally don't subscribe to the idea of Link being dead, or at least not during Majora's Mask itself, but when I was playing Majora's Mask for the first time, I was experiencing grief hardcore for the first time, and that idea really resonated with me. I had just lost my grandmother. I was 12 years old, and it was the first time I met the cruel realization that it turns out life is not the wondrous bliss that I was experiencing up to that point. It was the first time I saw a room full of adults crying. The idea of that sounded so foreign to me at that time, but to actually see it was something else. I remember taking a week or so off from school because I mentally just couldn't manage to go, and I remember the amount of work that I accrued and had to make up. I remember feeling so overwhelmed by all of it and just breaking down into tears at my family's dining room table, just staring at a pile of seemingly impossible work through streams of tears. She meant a lot to everyone in my family, and she was a fighter. The knowledge that she was gone, it just put an enormous hole in my stomach. Part of my life, the person who instilled so many valuable lessons and ideals within me and the world around me, was gone. So to play Majora's Mask again with that thematic reading in the back of my mind, at that time, it was one of the best things the game could have done for me. It's as if the game was saying to me, it's going to be okay. A lot of people understand how you feel. It does not matter how old you get, how experienced you are, you can see it coming from a mile away. Grief is never easy to get through. It takes a lot of time to cope with and work through it in a healthy way. And Majora's Mask takes the time to show us what it looks like when you don't. So let's highlight each area and see what I mean by using these 5 potential stages of grief as a template. Stage 1 is denial, and what do you know, where do you start the real game? Clocktown. The game can try to fool you as much as it wants, giving you this happy-go-lucky music, having the absurdly quirky cast of NPCs front and center. But as day 1 leads to day 2 and day 2 to 3, something feels off. As if you didn't already discover that Epona's lost and you're in a completely foreign world with none of your magic items that you used in your prior adventure, and as if you didn't just have the weirdest interactions with these motherfuckers 5 seconds ago. It isn't just that, there's something else. Something about all of this doesn't feel right. As soon as you look up though, you identify what that is. Kind of hard to miss it. The moon is going to collide with Termina. It's more than the talk of the town, it's the dilemma that defines the town. Some people seem unfazed about it, stuck in their own little worlds, and everyone else feels some kind of strong feeling about it. You fully understand that it's kind of hard to think about working your job as this town's only bank, apparently a time-traveling one at that, without worrying about a constant reminder of the impending doom hanging above you. That's the thing though, nobody in this town really knows what to think. There's a division between those who want to run for their lives and those who choose to stand their ground and enjoy the festival. An unbelievably realistic depiction of the fact that you'll never get everyone to agree on what to do in situations like this, as well as just politics in general, if that's what we want to consider it. David Kessler, a co-author of Elizabeth, describes denial in a very similar fashion to how Clocktown feels. Life makes no sense. We are in a state of shock and denial. We go numb. We wonder how we can go on, if we can go on, why we should go on. We try to find a way to simply get through each day. Denial and shock help us to cope and make survival possible. It seems as though some of these folks are just trying to deflect the possibility they're going to die in the efforts to make the most of their time. Some people seem to believe they can escape the moon, even though they can't. It's a town in a perpetual state of pure stasis. God damn, this game was made in 2000. Why does that still feel like such a painfully accurate depiction of reality in 2023? Sometimes when we're lost, confused, unsure of why something happened or what to do next, sometimes all we know to turn to is a state of blind and irrational anger. Woodfall initially doesn't seem like a place festering with it, right? I mean, Koume's irritated that Skull Kid whapped her when she wasn't looking, but you've seen him do worse, and it's not like Clocktown was devoid of angry people too. Then you get to the Deku Palace, and what you find is something far more intense than Skull Kid tripping an elderly lady off of her broomstick. The Deku King's daughter is lost near the Woodfall Temple, last seen traveling with a monkey, and with no other immediate person to accuse or punish in his confusion, the king immediately resorts to punishing him in a hasty fit of, I think, implied fantasy racism. You try to get this guy out of there, right? But all he could care about is saving the princess, so he teaches you the Sonata of Awakening, and now you're granted entry to the Woodfall Temple. But the Deku King overhears, and it seemingly strikes a chord with him, except, wrong bitch, that's a sacred Deku family tune, and it seems you've now essentially just sealed his fate, so great job, hope you're proud of yourself. Because you're Link, and you're not even as a joke built differently, you beat Odala, break every bone, do Dekus even have bones? In the Deku Princess's body, and transport her back to where we can see that the king is off the deep end. Nothing you can say will break him out of it. All that can snap him out of it is this. Reality beating him senseless. After the moment of realization finally sets in for him, he regrets what he's done. He's done irreparable damage, hurt someone who didn't deserve it, and as much as we can understand those feelings, the lengths to which he turned were too far even for someone in deeply rooted pain. Even if, by all logic, you've saved the area, cured the swamp's water, and saved the monkey, there's still a sobering feeling behind all of it. It's not this moment of huzzah! It's a more adult feeling than that. It's hard for me to describe. In Ocarina of Time, when you got to the end of a Child Link conflict, everyone but Ganondorf was usually happy because you stopped the bad things from going on, and that was oftentimes kind of it. Not to imply it's weak or devoid of greater meaning in that story or anything, but in Majora's Mask, it always feels like the happiness comes through the fact that you've helped the characters learn something significant about how to process the loss they've felt. I'll always love making Darunia jam out and becoming a sworn brother of his, but teaching the Deku King to slow down, to manage his anger, knowing that it isn't what brought his daughter back to him, I don't know. It's a much more fulfilling conclusion to me for something going on so early in the game. I think the most natural thing to do when grieving or facing death is to ask, why? Why did this happen? Is it a punishment from on high of some sort? Sometimes you try and rationalize a way for you to change what happened. Sometimes you try and ask for a way to make things right. In comes the Goron hero Darmani, who just tragically died trying to reach the bastard responsible for interrupting the spring to keep Snowhead trapped in an eternal winter. As someone who hates winter, this is the greatest crime against Termina, if you ask me, but considering how Skull Kid literally threatens everyone's lives, it may not be as big a deal comparatively. That and there are no vehicles you'd need to plow the roads for, but I digress. Darmani still lingers on as a ghost, filled with immense regret for failing his people, and he's incapable of moving on. How could you so easily when protecting the people you care about is essentially what you lived for? And so, he asks Link to either bring him back to life to make things right, or to ease his sorrows and let him rest. Seeing as we're only left with the one choice, all we can do is let this tortured soul sleep peacefully while we take a turn hoisting the hope of the Gorons with our own two hands. He's earned his rest. Just about everyone in Snowhead appears to be willing to trade something to bring back spring, as well as Darmani. What was once a bright and prosperous spring turned into a miserable and overcast winter, all because of the combined power of Skull Kid's turmoil and Got and Majora's otherworldly ancient evil powers. If there's any area track that really sells the vibe of what lost hope and a perpetual state of confusion as to what comes next sounds like, it would be Snowhead's theme during the winter. A stage that, in my experience, I think one is bound to encounter no matter what when facing death or experiencing the death of a loved one is depression. In my experience, it just can't be helped. There's eventually a period where you're just left to face the music that what's happened or is about to happen can't be undone. Your darkest thoughts bubble to the surface, you're left wondering what the point of moving on even is at some points, and who better to epitomize this feeling than Mikau and Lulu? A father and mother who lost their unborn children to the sea in the Garuda pirates, having been tricked by Skull Kid into thinking that they were keys into the Great Bay Temple. Mikau, in a state of pure desperation, after losing to the Beaver Brothers in an attempt to earn a bottle to bring his children back in, tries to raid the pirate fortress, but to no avail. He's left near dead at the shores of Great Bay and can only muster a desperate shriek of a guitar solo, an incredibly emotional way to exposit what your goal for this region is. Seeing as this region's main hub is comprised of people who, in some way or another, know Mikau and or Lulu, everyone is at least kind of bummed out, and what better additional way to personify the stage we're in than a murky maelstrom surrounding the Great Bay region's temple and waters. That's the thing about depression, though. It sounds like it's just you being sad all the time, when for me it manifests much more like I don't feel much either good or bad. You're just stuck sitting in the middle of any given emotional spectrum. The worst thing about it for me, though, is that it paralyzes you. Not from fear or terror, but out of pure apathy. Stuff that you love to do no longer makes you feel good anymore, so it makes you trick yourself into doing as little as humanly possible, beginning this horrid cycle where you feel bad about not doing anything, then you give up and decide that, well, you can't change that, so you may as well do the easiest thing, in this case, nothing, because you think you'd just feel awful if you were doing something anyways. Case in point, Lulu. For obvious reasons, she's being hit hardest by this, not giving you a response as any form of Link until you play her the new wave Bossa Nova. All she seems capable of doing is staring out at the temple, just burning the image of that shoreline into her retinas. Hope, once again, lies with you to set things right. One of the saddest things to think about in this game is that once Link is gone from Termina, the Gorons and the Indigogos won't ever see Darmani or Mikau again. It especially hurts thinking about how once Lulu gets her children back, at some point she'll have to figure he either left her, went missing, or died. She'll soon be grieving all over again unless Link leaves her with a note or breaks the silence, but who can really say? Where Woodfall was brought peace through the cleansing of the swamp, cleansing the poisonous anger out of the Deku King, and where Snowhead was brought peace by bringing the Gorons their hero and their springtime back, Great Bay is brought peace by bringing clarity to those stricken by depression through the magic of music. Zelda has always emphasized musical instruments as weapons more powerful than almost any sword or magic armor, and I think that idea rings especially true in Majora's Mask. You cure people's ailments, you heal people's souls with songs in this game. I don't think it's a stretch to say it's the game's core connecting thread through each area. Mikau manages to be at peace through the Song of Healing, and the Indigogos burst through the area's melancholy with their ensemble piece, and everything becomes so clear. I think it's most appropriate in this region out of them all when you've conquered the temple. The music playing over the area is now Termina Field's theme. Your impact on the world is always seen and heard when all is said and done. It's great. Every region thus far has been an environment or population struggling to keep living. So what happens when you reach one that's already dead? What can you do about those who have already been lost? There are various answers to this question, but the only way we can truly process everything we've gone through, the only way to move on, is with acceptance. Now, acceptance doesn't have to mean you're okay with whatever happened, just that you've reached an understanding that it did, and there's nothing you could have done to change that. Now, that's all well and good, but it takes time to allow yourself to reach that point. I can lay all this stuff out and try to make sense of what these stages are like for me, but As I said, no amount of understanding or preparation makes it any easier. You have to give yourself time to work through these feelings. I don't think it's any coincidence that Ikana has the most complex and lengthiest mini-dungeons waiting for you before you reach the temple. Acceptance is often not a straightforward walk into the horizon, it's a maze, one you'll have to put all of your effort into surpassing. Where better is this symbolized than by the dungeon waiting for you beneath the well? Each door is guarded by a Gibdo that needs something from you. Name an expendable item in your inventory, they can use them. It's fairly tedious. Some items you even need to get ahead of time to go through the dungeon in one clean sweep, but you know that you deserve to see it through. You deserve to see the destination you've been working to reach for yourself. You get the mirror shield and you now wield light itself as a new way past the darkness. You've made it. Now you climb out to find your sanctuary. Ikana Castle. You've still got a ways to go. A lot of souls in this canyon haven't made it there either. You've got to wait your turn, buddy. It's here where the game places its meanest trick. It turns out you need to come here with a powder keg at the ready to finish the dungeon. Hope you came prepared. Well, no, not that. With your help and perseverance, Egos to Ikana comes to his senses. All the suffering, all the decay, the fall of Ikana, Skull Kid certainly didn't help things, but he's not to blame for all of it. Elegy of Emptiness in mind and your final dungeon ahead of you, you've got one hell of a climb to make. Yeah, remember when this video was about Stone Tower? Yeah, me neither. I love this area, truly. It's not the best part of the game, but it's the area that means more to me than any other individual area of Majora's Mask. The most satisfying thing about Zelda to me is looking back at everything you've gone through, the people you've helped, the adventures you've had, and seeing how it's all led up to who you are right now. It's a similar feeling to the growth you experience in RPGs, thinking back to when these Skulltulas and Deku Scrubs would make you stay on your toes with your 3 hearts, and here you are now squashing them like the bugs they are. Oh, you're supposed to wait for them to turn around? Yeah, alright, you can do that if you want. You've got an arsenal of weapons, upgrades, and magic gear, and it's not a question of can you take these guys on, it's how do you want to take these guys on. Stone Tower gives you that sense of payoff when you think about how you couldn't even make it up the clock tower on your first 3-day cycle, unless you cheat, but we don't talk about that. Here you are now, ascending a tower to the heavens, restoring hope within the spirits of the dead, where the folks in Clocktown at first wouldn't let you do anything, including leaving town because you were a child. Oh, sorry, a child without a weapon. Thank Christ these guards have sensibilities. After all, better to ensure that a Deku can't look outside at the mountains than to help this old lady who just got mugged in plain sight. Out here doing God's work, I see. I say that last part jokingly, but Link is quite literally doing God's work now, wielding the power of light and all kinds of otherworldly abilities for the goodwill of those around him, even those who have done great harm to Termina, restoring hope in even those who have died a cruel death. The power of snot to the power of hope. Talk about a glow up, right? Link is an angel blessing Termina's residents with a selfless hero who will stop at nothing to make these people happy. I wouldn't ever describe this repetitive ascent as fun, per se, but when viewing Majora's Mask through the stages of grief lens, I think repeatedly creating reflections of the spirits carried within you captures the process of learning acceptance quite accurately. It's not something you can really face one time and be at peace with yourself. You need to just keep telling yourself, what's done is done, and if you want to do right by those fallen, then keep on keeping on. It's what they'd want you to do. I get it, I really do. It isn't a rip-roaring good time, but if that's what it took to make this thematic reading pay off in this way, then I really don't mind it. Once you get into Stone Tower Temple, the game leans full tilt into the bizarre, as if it's just saying, fuck it. Temple in the shape of a face, flip the temple upside down, break the pre-established formula, give Link a mask within a main dungeon, use every form of Link to survive, invert the music, let the player go sicko mode on Twin Mold, who's gonna stop us? It's Majora's dungeon design at its best. Except for needing to enter the temple 3 separate times to get all the fairies, that was always annoying. After all that growth you've experienced after conquering an ancient tower to the heavens, or maybe hell in the case of when it's upside down, and saving all the giants, what could Majora possibly do to stop you? After all, if it's something that can be stopped, then just try and stop it. Skull Kid and Majora make for an excellent pair of villains, complementing each other while symbiotically benefiting from their partnership, or puppetship? Majora, being this malevolent force of evil to eradicate, serves as an effective antagonist to build up and fills the quota of having an unambiguously hateable antagonist. You never really get an exposition pocket explaining what they even are, just that they're an ancient evil that was sealed away for a time, and I wouldn't change a thing about that. This is a textbook example of a shallow villain done extremely well. Once you learn who or what a villain is, they aren't really scary anymore, are they? You know what they're capable of, and once you know what to expect, well, mystery and fear aren't really part of the equation anymore. Majora to this day still makes me uncomfortable because I don't really know what they are. Sure, I know what the AI is capable of doing when I'm fighting it, but this is an evil that existed millennia ago and caused essentially every single problem Termina has experienced. What if it hacks a new move into my game? Have I even seen all of its moves? The fear is still there. It's still there for the bosses in the temples too. Really, all of the bosses invoke a sense of unease because they're all essentially extensions of Majora itself. The range of powers on display there is nigh endless. Mind control, reverse aging someone, climate change, imprisoning souls within masks, creating a moon to crash into the world below, probably the aliens, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some other ones too. If all of that is just what Majora entrusts to its lackeys to handle, what in God's name could it personally inflict on the world? Infinitely renewable turmoil. Skull Kid is a great villain because he isn't one. Not to imply that he did nothing wrong, but he is still a kid. A troublemaking kid, sure, but a kid nonetheless. Someone learning who the hell they are. From what we can intuit based on Ocarina of Time in this game, Skull Kid's always just kind of been there. It's not clear if he really mingles with anyone in Hyrule. He's never appeared to have a family or people to rely on. That is, until he befriended the Giants. Finally, he has people to confide in, people who care about him. But even that's too much good fortune for this kid because the Giants need to lay dormant and guard Termina, leaving him all alone again. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're a kid and you're abandoned, you have nothing left to do but lash out at the world. Where are you going? How is any of this fair? Why me? Who wouldn't get angry and take it out on the world? Once he does though, the Giants threaten to kill him. It wasn't enough to leave him. Now if he doesn't abandon his home, his enormous and powerful former friends are going to kill him. Maybe Skull Kid didn't witness them die, but he still lost them. So what happens when you mix a confused child with abandonment issues, loneliness, and a landslide of grief? Yeah, that. Link is empowered by masks in this game. They're more than masks, they're symbols, and they're filled with happiness and hope. They're the reason Link is capable of helping so many people. Skull Kid is overpowered by Majora's Mask, just a puppet to be toyed with. It's debatable how much of what he does is more him or Majora, but after all he experienced, maybe he is just okay with watching the world burn. It's left up in the air, and again, I like that a lot. Answers, ironically enough, aren't always the solution to making characters compelling. Letting the audience determine the interpretation for themselves can be just as, if not more powerful, than providing a definitive explanation of why a character is the way they are. Because once all is said and done, the final scene manages to make the protagonist and antagonist resolve with each other in a way that pays off better than any other example of this trope that I can think of. The Giants never stopped caring about Skull Kid, neither did Tattle, Tail, or Link. Things were just getting in the way. Skull Kid couldn't recognize that, but now that he knows that he isn't alone, it turns out that things are pretty alright. The light at the end of that tunnel was still waiting for him, after everything. There's no greater comfort to find in media than realizing that someone out there gets it. It can be any number of things. The fact that a group of storytellers in a position of significant influence on a generation of people can write about something that you've had trouble with or a problem you're still facing and offer valuable lessons to overcome it, it can make you feel seen and heard in a way that nothing else can. The fact that this is being written about in a story that will be experienced by millions of people makes it apparent that even if the storytellers themselves haven't grappled with the same issue, millions of people experiencing that story have. You know that you're not alone. I think Zelda's greatest strength is in its ability to adapt to whatever form it wants to while not feeling alien to the larger series. There's a Zelda game out there for everyone, yet it always has that special spirit of adventure powering it all, one that no other series really has to me. Majora's Mask certainly doesn't feel as fleetingly escapist as many of the other games can be, but that adventure is no less meaningful. It may not be a triumphant epic, but the adventure it took me on when I was that grieving 12-year-old kid, the adventure it still takes me on whenever I revisit it, it's something no other game makes me feel to this very day. I feel understood when I play Majora's Mask. I know that millions of people know what loss is like in all forms, losing friends, losing loved ones, losing your strength. I know that it's okay for it to hurt and that you can always find the light waiting for you when you're past the pain. What you'll find isn't the blissful joy of childhood wonder, but calming wisdom that you had to go through some hard times, but you're stronger than ever for pushing through it. That's what Majora's Mask was telling me back then, and I hope that feeling never goes away whenever I revisit one of the best games ever made. The video is over now. This last section is just an update for anyone who is understandably wondering what the hell is going on. I apologize I took nearly 10 months to upload another video. I have been all over the place in terms of motivation as per usual, but I promise that I've been working on multiple larger scale videos. I primarily have been working on a big ass video covering 9 different RPGs and chronicling my experience with the genre after having changed my mind about it back in 2020. I knew at the time I considered the idea it would be an undertaking, but I also severely overestimated how willing I would be to sit down and record 9 30+ hour long games, because turns out it takes quite a long time. I can't say I regret approaching the video the way I did, because I enjoyed all of these games really organically despite them all being vastly different in many different ways, and if taking my time is what I had to do to approach each game organically when I wanted to play them, then I did what I had to do. The video is nearly done. I'm halfway to, I think, like 2/3 through the last 2 games, and I have all the other segments of the video already made and ready to stitch together. I've just been taking it really slowly. So far, it's probably going to be over 2.5 to 3 hours long, so it's fairly in-depth. It's kind of as if I just made 10 different reviews and molded them together with one shared commonality, so I hope it will make up for the lack of presence over the last 10 months. Yeah, I realize in hindsight I should have just worked on that video in the background while making several smaller videos, and I apologize for making you guys wait so goddamn long, but I hope it will be worth it, because I'm still pretty proud of that video. I've also been working on a big analysis video of Xenoblade Chronicles in a very similar scope and manner as my Xenoblade Chronicles 2 video. It's going to cover all the Definitive Editions content in just one beefy video. It will be a similarly passionate plunge into one of my favorite games. I'm working to 100% the game and I'm taking it slowly, but I'm hoping to chip away at it and get it ready to release this year, maybe as a holiday thing. I'm not quite sure yet. I'll keep you posted. Those are both of the big projects I have planned next in terms of the big stuff. I'll have to find some smaller ideas to play with while those videos develop in the meantime, but regardless, I appreciate your patience and your viewership as always, and for those who left comments while I was gone saying, I hope you're doing alright, well, I greatly appreciate it, and I read all of those, and I just appreciate the amount of support this channel's been getting even when I haven't been uploading shit. So, yeah, hopefully I will have more stuff coming your way pretty soon. So thank you all so much for watching, and if you feel so inclined, like, comment, and subscribe, and otherwise, I will see you guys, later. I don't know, sometime.